2016. We're going to go ahead and call the special meeting to order and ask for a roll call of the council members, please.
Councilmember Dorenbecker.
Here.
Councilmember Durham.
Here.
Vice Mayor Mueller.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here. And I invite Chair Cook to open her meeting and move forward with that.
I will call the special meeting of the Yountville Arts Commission to order. And Samantha, if you could do roll call.
Commissioner Penman.
Here.
Commissioner McDonald.
Here.
Commissioner Heiser.
Here.
Please note Commissioner Dana Talley is excused, and Chair Cook.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of the entire council, welcome to the newly constituted Arts Commission. And on the new members, thank you for your contributions in the past and going forward. Very much appreciated.
We have two new members, Dee Heiser and Jim McDonald, and Chris Dinatale, who cannot be here tonight.
I know you pointed toward Jessica, but
I know, but she's already here. So yeah, Jessica Penn.
again, thank you for stepping up to serve the Yountville community. Now I'll invite Carrie Dorman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next up is adoption of our special meeting agenda for today. Are there any changes or corrections?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Do we need both votes? I think we need to hear from the Arts Commission itself.
Yes, please.
Okay, would somebody like to propose an adoption of the agenda? I will. In a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Adopting the agenda?
That's good, because it was going to get really awkward if you didn't. The first thing we will do now is recognize one of our longest-standing art supporters and commission members, Nancy Gates, for her long service with the Yountville Arts Commission. I invite Nancy to join me at the podium, and none of us is that tall, so I'll be moving that microphone down. Other than Joe.
I like being on this side for pictures. It's better.
Hello. This is a certificate of appreciation in recognition of the contributions to the town of Yountville, honoring Nancy Gates. The town council and staff express a sincere thank you for your contributions and service to the town of Yountville as a member of the Yountville Arts Commission, presented August 16th, 2016. But wait, there's more.
The good stuff. My pleasure to give this to you. Well done. Honey.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Would you like to share a thought or two? Please?
Sure. It was my pleasure to be associated with the Yountville Arts Commission. Going forward from 2011, we had the first meeting of the Yountville Book Club in 2011 in April. And I enjoyed my time, but I thought it was time to give the opportunity to other people, right? And so let them step right up and enjoy. So it's, I appreciate this very much. I appreciate this very much. And I've enjoyed my time, and now I'll go home. Thank you.
And maybe we'll see that bottle at Wednesday Night Bocce. Oh, okay. I had to try it. Okay, next up is public comment. So anything that's not on our agenda for today can be brought to the Arts Commission or the council if anyone would like to do so. Seeing no one move forward, we will move on to our first administrative item, which is considering adoption of a mural design for the underpass of Highway 29. We'll start with the staff report, please.
Thank you. So we are here tonight, or this afternoon, thankfully, after over a decade when this idea has been looked at by staff and different councils and commissions over the years. And we researched through those historic files, and the Yountville Arts Commission decided to put this on their work plan last year. After looking at this over, I think, 4 or 5 meetings, we were looking at some mural artists who had come forward to us and decided to really kind of chart some new waters and do a very public call for artists for the design. And beginning with that, we researched the actual call for artists, and this whole process appeared on over 17 Arts Commission agendas since February of 2015. As you know, those meetings are open to the public. We post those agendas on bulletin boards and online. And through that comprehensive process, we posted the call for artists on callforentry.org, which is a worldwide website where artists look for different opportunities to either create art or create designs or come forward with different ideas. We received over 50 entries to that call for artists, and staff reviewed them first to make sure that they met the basic qualifications and requirements that we had set up in the call for artists. And then we put that out to the jury, which was the Yountville Arts Commissioners and staff, to go through, and we had a criteria in which we rated those that were based on their previous work, technical quality, creativity, and their overall style. And the list was brought down to 10 from that process. We then met in a special meeting and scored again the 10 artists based on their experience and then their community-oriented design approach, as that the approach we were moving forward with, and as well as their overall style of art. So those from that meeting, the commission decided on 3 artists to bring forward. As you may remember, in January we held a public meeting where those 3 artists or artist groups presented to a group of 125 people who were in attendance, and they were able to vote and chose LC Studio Tudo as our artist to design this project. So we entered into phase 1 of a contract with LC Studio Tudo, which was to come up with what we were hoping was for 3 designs. They came forward with 4 designs at the July 11th Yountville Arts Commission meeting. The artists actually were urging the commission to pare that down to 3, but they didn't. There was no consensus on any one to take out of the lineup. So on July 14th, the Arts Commission held a public meeting here at Town Hall where the community was again invited to come hear the artist presentations and vote for the design that they would like to see installed. So the presentation was also recorded, and then the next day was posted on the website as well as the survey, so that people, not just visually from looking at the design, could make a decision, but also hear the artist's statement about what drove them to those designs. With the help of some community volunteers, Carrie Dorman, Sharon D'Amato, who I think are both here tonight or this afternoon, thank you for that. They just helped to distribute paper ballots throughout the Veterans Home. We also, information was sent out via email. It was in the Yountville Sun, the Napa Register, Nextdoor.com, Facebook, to really encourage as many residents as possible to weigh in on this process. The responses did have to indicate a zip code, whether or not they were online or in the paper form, so that we were able to see clearly how many residents were weighing in on that. We also had the survey online set up to only allow 1 vote from each IP address, which I know there's lots of fancy ways to go around that, but helps us to make sure that no one influenced it by 100 votes from the same IP address or something like that. So the deadline for voting was Friday, July 29th. On Friday, we received a huge amount of ballots from the Veterans Home, over 171 ballots. And we received another 60 paper ballots from residents. And together with the online votes, that totaled 471 responses that we either hand entered into the system or voted online. And this is really an unheard of response rate to any of the surveys in the 6.5 years I've been here. We've done, as you know, we just went through a very large community survey response process through the planning department last year, where we received, I think, about half of that amount, or excuse me, 2/3 of that amount. So really, it was a large response rate and pretty unheard of as far as any type of response or connection with the Veterans Home, with what we're seeing is about 187 responses in total from the Veterans Home. So the results in your packet were as follows. Design A which I'll pull up on here as we're talking, was Influence of the Earth. It received 107 votes, or 23%. Design B, Vayat Zor, received 40 votes, or 9%. And The Memory of a Tree received 203 votes, or 43%. And Clay Earth, which was Design D, received 72 votes, or 15% of the response. We also included none of the above in the ballots, just in the event that people felt very strongly that they didn't like any of them. We received 49 votes of none of the above, which was 10% of the response. So we received 61 comments that were included in the report for your review. As you see, the public response to our poll was very encouraging. I think having almost 500 votes is a very strong representation, and all but three of those, I believe, were Yountville zip code residents. So those responses showed Design C, which was The Memory of a Tree, receiving the most votes from the public. So formal town action is required town council action is to determine if the town council and arts commission, with arts commission input, wish to move on to phase 2 of that project, which would be to accept the design and approve the contract. It's just as an update, as far as fundraising goes, to date, we have over $63,000 as of today committed to the project. We have quite a few partners, including the Napa Valley, I was supposed to say Vine Trail Coalition, excuse the typo, the Yountville TID, the hotels and inns of Yountville, as well as quite a few donations from Yountville residents and businesses. We're very close to meeting our goal. And I am here to answer any questions if you like, as well as the Yountville Arts Commission. We do have the 2 new members here this evening out of 3 that are brand new. They did come into this process as it was nearing this end phase as far as the voting was concerned, but we spent quite a bit of time prior to their first meeting catching them up on the process, where we've been, how it's gone along, as well as discussed it at our last Arts Commission meeting in August 1st when they were all in attendance. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Make a comment?
Well, certainly, and then what we'll do is we'll ask questions of the staff report, and then we'll get into more dialogue. But if you want to ask a question or make a comment.
I just wanted to add to something that she kind of went over a little bit, is with the help of Samantha. I feel that the Arts Commission has done the absolute best we could to get the input of the residents as to what we wanted. During the process where we had the call for entry out, we also did a survey to our residents, just a general, what kind of mural would you like to see? We presented, an abstract one versus one of people, and kind of did a yes, no, which do you prefer, that had about 10 different examples. And we also asked them specifically things they did and did not want to see. And so before we had even started the process of picking artists or picking designs, we got a real good feeling that they did not want a historical, typical mural. And so they did not want real people or names or faces up there that they recognized. So something more abstract and artistic in nature. So we've been getting the most input we could from the residents all through the process. And I think that's important to how we got here.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you for adding to that. So I'll invite any questions we have of Samantha's staff report from the council or commissioners.
I just have one.
Yes. Councilmember Dornbecker.
May I ask that you put the one we chose, that was chosen up?
So this is the design.
Thank you.
This is the actual.
That's the highest vote getting.
This is the highest vote getting. So this is what the community's response was. And then this is it imposed in the space. So yeah, it's important to note it is up to the council is really the end approval for this project. So you're not just approving a contract at this point. You are, if you decide to move forward, approving this design. And if not, that's a discussion that we'll have about how to move forward.
To add on to that question, according to the the rendering that you're showing here, it doesn't wrap around to the sides of the overpass, but it seems to me that that was included in the presentation. Is that wrong? Does it not wrap around?
No, it does not wrap around. But that is something we could talk with the artists about, but it wasn't included on the original call for entry and the design elements.
And they've specifically chosen which is the south facing, which is the north facing, or
They have not.
Is that, whose decision is that going to be? Are we supposed to discuss that today?
Definitely, you could discuss that today.
Okay. Any other
Or, I mean, if the council sees fit, they could also delegate that to the Arts Commission.
Okay. Any other questions of the report? Any of the commissioners have any questions? I think that was a good point, Chair Cook, that you made about the additional process that has been used. I know looking at some of the public comments is why is it abstract? Why isn't it historical? And you spoke specifically to that question. So seeing no other questions, I'll invite members of the public to comment. This isn't technically a public hearing, but all of our hearings are basically public hearings. So please share your thoughts on TV, on the internet, live. No? Oh, we can't hear you from all the way back there, Devin. You have to come up. Sorry, you're going to come all this way. You're going to have to come to the podium.
To say, that's the one I voted for. So I'm happy.
Okay. Seeing no other members of the public want to come forward, I'll return the discussion to... Oh, we do. See? You wait to the very last moment for dramatic effect.
I just wanted to clarify something for everybody, is that, especially what you brought up, a lot of people at the Veterans Home did not know anything at all because they don't get involved. And so they didn't know anything at all about all the different steps that went into this final decision. And because I gathered up the votes and brought them in, I found that there was quite a few of the people that voted that they didn't like, they voted none of the above, that were from the home. But it was because they didn't get into the very early stages of the decision making. And so I just wanted you to know that now everybody is getting all excited about seeing it done, and they're really happy about it.
If you could just share your name on...
Oh, I'm sorry,
the
Sharon
microphone
D'Amato.
Yeah, just so we get it on the recording.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just speak to that very briefly. At the public meeting, some folks from the Veterans Home expressed that same concern, and it was talked through in rather great detail. It's always challenging for all of us that we put out information for months and months, and then we hear that people haven't heard anything about it, and we do all we can, and the staff puts out in various forms of outreach, whether it be electronic or paper, through the mail, through organizations and such. So we try to get as many people informed as early and frequently as possible. One point that the town manager made at that public meeting was less than 50 yards away, we are renovating Veterans Memorial Park and adding significant veteran, I would say, elements that recognize and honor that park that don't exist today. And so I think that was a strong consideration in what was happening with this mural and what's happening literally across the street in the park. I don't know if, Steve, you wanted to elaborate on that.
Well, I will, and I also want to make another statement, because the process that we've used as a community is somewhat different. And one of the things that I often get to share to people is that the public process is not always clean and simple, and especially when you invite people to participate. And that's what we've done. We've done in this particular thing, it's challenging for staff because we're letting go of certain things, a process, challenging for the commission. We've had some conversations with the commission about, what do we do? What do we don't like it? Where do we go? Challenging for the council as well, and I'm going to say challenging for the community in some cases. But I do think in this particular case, it was something we tried. I think it was something that had great intentions, and we can work on execution, but I just want to put that out there because I think, Mayor, you bring up a good point. People have engaged in the conversation at different points, and over a year and a half, there's been a lot of different public input, and we'll continue to have. And I just think it's reflective of the community, and I just think it's been an interesting process and an interesting a learning experience for all of us involved in the process. But I do think, and I will elaborate, the Veterans Memorial Park renovation that the council has funded and fully focused on the renovation includes inscriptions recognizing and appreciating veterans. It includes military medallions, a star in the plaza, increased focus of the park with ADA accessibility. And I think one of the things that we're really excited about that's unique, because many communities across the country have a Veterans Memorial Park. Every community has veterans. Every community does not have the Veterans Home. So we're going to be incorporating some interpretive panels that talk about the history and the relationship that's unique to Yountville for the Veterans Home. And then we're going to also, for me, one of the fun things that we worked with the landscape architect was the palette. The landscape palette is really going to be reflective of reds, whites, blues, lavenders, purples, and really kind of have something that when you look at it, it'll be subtle, and then there'll be some less subtle recognitions and banners. So I think we're going to really take, instead of just having a park with a name, we're going to have a park with a name and a vision and a message. So I do appreciate the opportunity to share on both of those fronts.
And I also want to emphasize again one thing that Samantha mentioned in her verbal report is this does come down to a council decision. We are taking the public vote as an advisory, as well as we want to hear from the Arts Commission. If there are concerns that the commissioners have about this particular highest vote getting, we need to have that conversation today. Just as the council needs to discuss that, we often get public comment on our decision making, and we all have to evaluate that individually. This is a fairly strong message that we're getting from the public, so you take that into account however you feel appropriate. So I just throw that out there to remind folks that if someone is sitting at the table or the dais and they are really uncomfortable with this selection, we can talk through that and see if there's something else we need to consider. So with that, I invite anyone that would like to start. I would invite Chair Cook if you'd like to.
Part of our discussion when the artists came to town to the public meeting and presented all 4 designs, it was the same way we narrowed it down from 10 artists to 3, is could we all agree as commissioners representing the public and the arts that any one of the 4 was acceptable to us. And like Samantha had mentioned, they asked us to narrow it down, but we each had our favorites, and nobody had an extremely strong position that I could not support this. And we had been through that process when we were choosing artists to present to the public. There were some where we said, a couple of us stood up and said, no, we could not be happy with that artist. So we had been through that process and knew how it worked and applied it to these 4 drawings, and had to agree that we couldn't eliminate, that we were all comfortable with all of them. I had a favorite, but everybody would. And I think the vote is definitive enough that I would have to agree.
Okay. Other commissioners like to share their thoughts?
I would say I'm not surprised at all that this is the one that the public chose. When we talked about it before, it was the one that we figured people would be most drawn to because it isn't as abstract as the other ones, and it represents Yountville in a very clear way, which some of the other ones were a little bit harder to see. It wasn't the one I voted for, but I still really like it and can be happy if that's the one that's chosen. There was one that I would have fought against, but that's not the one that got chosen, so it's okay. But yeah, this is exactly the one that I thought the public was going to be drawn to, so it doesn't surprise me in the least that this is the one that had the strongest support.
And I do also prefer that the ends not be wrapped. I think it frames it better this way with a definitive end, that it's just on the walls. Not wrapped.
Yeah, I just had a recollection from the visuals that they did wrap them around, but that could have just been my
These are the visuals they sent
My
for
own-
that meeting.
imagination filling in. And it might have been that there was a question about does it wrap around and,
Right.
okay. Okay. Now's your chance, commissioners. It's not required to comment, but if you'd like to. Make sure that, is that green light on those, all those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm happy with the choice. Wasn't my choice either, but I'm really happy. One of them was not chosen, and I thought the first one would have sufficed and pleased most of the masses because of the discrepancy of what it would say to the veterans bridge, and I thought that the colors were very patriotic, and I thought that that would please the masses. But it's going to be exciting. I think a lot of people are talking about it in my neighborhood too, so it'll be an exciting process to watch in motion.
Thank you. Jim?
And I didn't really choose this one either, but but the voters have spoken, so to speak, and I'm happy with it. It seems like the most straightforward or clear visioned mural design, so I can see how it attracted the response that it did. And I was thinking about the wraparound too. I think you'd have to do some landscape removal there if you did that, but I don't believe I ever saw that as part of the proposed mural design. So I think it's really exciting, so I'm happy to move forward.
Great, thanks. And there was some public comment, Samantha, maybe you could speak to it, about concern for maintenance, which we haven't touched on, and if that's included in the fundraising component or how we're going to handle that. And also, there were a couple about safety concerns, and
Sure.
if you could address those before we continue our discussion.
Absolutely. So that's something, a common themes that we've heard throughout the process was the fear of it creating a distraction to drivers. That is something that we've kept in mind. Obviously, choosing this artist firm in January, part of that was also that they have worked on Caltrans projects, some that are adjacent to very busy roadways where they're traveling 55 miles an hour. So have some experience as far as the scale of that something needs to be to not create a distraction. The next step in this process, if we choose to move forward tonight, we actually have to apply through Caltrans for approval. And that's not just of the to go ahead and start working on their walls. It's also to review the design for those same comments. And so, is it safe? Does it create any distracting reflections, or are there colors that are similar to Caltrans signage? And so they're looking at all of those factors for safety as well. As far as ongoing maintenance, it's going to be very little. In the town Public Works Department, we're working together on that. And so once the mural is put up and there's an anti-graffiti coating that will go on top of it, it really will only need, most likely, every 10 to 12 months to have a little bit of water is all it's going to need. In the event that it's damaged for graffiti, that coating will allow us to use just very minor cleansers to remove it. In the event that doesn't remove it, part of the contract with the artist is that they would come out and repair the mural. And our contract is through Caltrans for them to approve it, is we have to guarantee that those things are going to happen, that we have to maintain it. They actually give you a 30-day window to remove graffiti, but this is Yountville, and we would be working on that immediately if something was to come up. Yes. And so, yes, we've heard those common themes throughout, and we did have a Caltrans representative there in January, and we've stayed in communication with them as we've gone through this process. And so, we're making sure that throughout, whether it's, from the beginning when we're going to be cleaning the area, while it's being painted, and then afterwards, that it will be safe for residents who travel through that area, whether it's on their bike, scooter, walking, or in a vehicle.
The last thing I wanted to see if you could comment on was the changeability of any of the 4 designs as presented. I know there were some comments made about, well, can we take the quote and put it on another one? And the artists had fairly specific points of view on that, I think.
Yeah, I think like any artist, when they design something, it's they feel pretty strongly it is a work of art. The most common thing we have heard is, can you put the quote on this one, on number 3? And they felt like it would just get lost due to the coloring, and they didn't really recommend that. They said they had actually tried it, and it didn't work for something that they would advocate for us to choose.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I will also add, and it's related to your maintenance and landscaping question. Town staff's already anticipated that we will probably need to help Caltrans out a little with the landscape maintenance in the immediate area. So we'll be working on and addressing that in partnership with Caltrans, and if our fundraising is sufficient for the project, we may be able to add a little landscaping to Caltrans and or end up with a responsibility for maintaining that landscaping as well, because we do know that that particular area is not maintained to the same level that the town's landscaping is. So we're having that kind of conversation with Caltrans as well.
And it's also part of the new Vine Trail route, so there should be a different level of maintenance anyway.
That does not address Caltrans does not care about that. So it's going to be up to us. That's what I'm just going to say. That is not, even though you're correct that the Vine Trail path comes right to there, that's not a consideration for them on their maintenance level.
I'm just saying that between the Vine Trail Coalition and the town, we would want to be keeping it to an even higher standard just from the traffic standpoint.
We would think so, and we can certainly add that to the increasing conversation with Vine Trail about maintenance.
You like my leading question?
Yes, I understood that one.
So let's continue discussion. Councilmember Durham?
Sure. Just to be clear, this was not the one I voted on. And mine only got 40 votes, so I'm well ahead of you. But that's the beauty of a democracy and the way a republic works, is we all get to vote on it, and then we all take it and we move forward. One of the things I thought was interesting, it's art, and the artists get to make their determination. That's why you hired them, to do the things that they do. It's funny, when these pictures went into the Napa Register, I immediately got calls from my mother's friends in Napa, very upset. And that's the before we had even voted. I'm sure they're more upset now. But what's fun is, once again, it's art, and this isn't Napa, and I don't like excuse me, let me qualify that. I don't like all of the art on the art walk in Yountville, but together it makes an amazing experience in Yountville, and that's the fun of it as well. I love this piece, and what was interesting too is at my office hours last night, someone showed up and I asked them about this because it was on the agenda, and they looked at me and said it didn't matter which one won, they were all so amazing, and we're all so fortunate to be able to experience it here in Yountville, and that's exactly what I agree with as well. So I'm very happy with this choice, and I think it's going to be amazing when my friends who insist on coming up and staying in my extra bedroom here drive through here are going to be amazed as well. So thank you very much, and thank you for all the work and time you guys all put into it.
Thanks. Councilmember Dornbecker.
I did have one question, and that is of the Caltrans piece of this. Will Caltrans be taking any public comment, or is there any way that we can have input? It would really, to me, it would be disastrous if they then denied our ability to put it in there.
So in our application, we do include staff reports in the resolution if you choose to pass it, so they know that the council is behind the project. You're always welcome to send a letter that I can include with that application. We do have letters also coming from the Vine Trail Coalition, and also requested from the Chamber of Commerce advocating for the project. So Caltrans, there's kind of a two-part process, and so one of them is the encroachment permit to just do the work. The other one is that they have a regional arts review commission that will review it for what appears to be the design. So there's very unclear information that I've received from Caltrans as to what exactly that commission reviews for. But from the experience of our artists who went through this process in Sacramento, and then also looking at some other Caltrans projects that have happened regionally in the Bay Area, I don't anticipate us having a design problem with that commission. This is very much a heightened design in relation to some of the others that I've seen them approve in the area. So, but it is in their purview.
Well, this wasn't my favorite either, but I do like it. And I want to thank the Arts Commission and Sam for all the work you've done making sure that the community feels heard. And as part of it, I have never seen such a wonderful meeting as we had when we all met to choose the artists. I happened to be away for the other meeting, but it was really heartwarming to see so many people out to support it. So I'm thrilled and I'm very excited. So thank you very much, and let's get Caltrans on board right away.
Thanks. Vice Mayor.
Well, I voted for this one. I guess I'm the first one to admit that this was my favorite the first time I saw it. I love trees. To me, it just all of them were beautiful, but this one really just fit Yountville to me. So that's why I voted for it, and I really thought it would be a good bridge, no pun intended, between the town and some of our likes and the veterans who tend to be a little more traditional. So I was very happy to see that it was chosen. I think it's very interesting, as all art is, that there's a lot of people talking about it. There's certainly, back to trying to communicate to the veterans, I brought up every aspect of the mural. Every time I go to the Allied Council, it's on KVET. The TV rolls all the time. Same way with the Veterans Home Project. So, and a very special thanks to Carrie and Sharon for getting those ballots up there, because our veterans, I told them every time if they didn't vote, they couldn't complain. So the very last time, with all those ballots that they turned in, I think they might have taken that to heart. So I'm very excited about it. I can hardly wait for it to be done. And if you have any other ideas that how we can reach the veterans, we're trying. So if maybe we'll try another survey and just see how many people respond to how to increase our communication, because we certainly are trying. And I just thought all the number of votes that they had really spoke a lot, that we've really shared this as a community.
Thank you. And it doesn't matter what vote I cast on which design. I think Councilmember Durham put it very well, which is it's important that we include our community in a decision of this magnitude. I started out being one of those people that thought historical representation was the way to go, and then it was easy to determine it's impossible to get the right mix of who's in and who's out and what's in and what's out. And so there would always be somebody upset about not including or overemphasizing. So it was a much better idea to eliminate that component altogether and go with something more abstract than that. I do like the fact that it highlights our natural environment, which is so critical throughout this valley. We take great care to maintain that, and this, I think, is a symbol to that commitment. And so I can embrace the memory of a tree to represent that. Art is meant to inspire conversation. It's by definition not to get unanimous consensus, because then that would probably be a boring piece of art. But this is, I think, something that's going to be entertaining for our residents as we're walking our dogs and walking with our coffee, and just to stop by and you see something different than you saw the previous day or previous week. And so I think it's going to be really an exceptional addition to our community. And then, of course, it's going to be an eye-catching experience for the folks visiting Yountville. I think this is going to be a destination piece, I think, that anyone that knows about it that's in the area is, unfortunately, that probably means they're going to have to get off the highway, go underneath, and go back down a mile, come back to see the whole thing. But maybe they should just stop in here and walk and enjoy it at a little slower pace. But I think the quality is exceptional. I think the thorough process and the vetting that went through picking the final artist and then to pick our final partners speaks to what we find important also, which is having a high quality. Even if we don't agree on our favorites along the art walk or our favorite choice here, it's about having quality first and foremost. So I also I'm excited that we're taking a very dreary, gray, water-stained 2 walls and turning it into something really unique and beautiful. So I can support the recommendation. And I also want to commend the Arts Commission, because some people only see these meetings and think that that's all that's going into the effort, and there were countless hours that you've put in, and councils before us and art advocates before us over the last decade, really. It's been at least a decade that people have talked about that dreary underpass, and what are we going to do about it someday? Well, we're finally at that day, so that's exciting. So with that, I'll, unless the commissioners had any further comment, then if not, I'll invite a motion by the council.
I would like to make a motion that we approve resolution number 16-3363, adopt the resolution approving the Yountville Underpass mural design, the memory of a tree, and I'm glad it's an oak, and authorizing the town manager to execute phase 2 of the agreement with LC Studio Tutto to fabricate and install the Yountville Underpass mural on site as agreed upon by the Town Council and the Yountville Arts Commission for a full contract amount with the contingency not to exceed $85,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Before I ask for that vote, I do want to also commend Samantha and our staff for working so diligently with Hennessy and Sonia and putting together the contracts, putting together all the background information that's needed to go into this. And thank you in advance for dealing with the numerous calls you're going to make to Caltrans to work through this process.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So with that, I'll invite a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And just for the record, I also recognize that all of the 4 members of the Arts Commission were supportive of this vote as well. So that sounds pretty unanimous to me. So with that, we have a plan. Thank you all very much. We're not finished for today, though. We have another item to discuss and potentially take action regarding a call for artists for the aforementioned Veterans Memorial Park.
Back to
Let's
me.
move right to Samantha for her staff
I'm so
report.
thrilled about what just happened there. So we wanted to make sure we had you all in one room, that we make this very productive. And as Steve just spoke about minutes ago, the Veterans Memorial Park project is moving forward, and a piece of that is to commission a sculpture to be placed in the park that is to pay homage to our veterans of the United States. And so we began, as you know, that redesign in late 2015. It's progressed, and then the council has approved those bid, and it's out to bid right now. So we discussed including a $20,000 budget for a new sculpture to be placed in the park. The $20,000 would be to provide a commission that will entice artists to submit designs for the project or a completed piece of art for consideration. At the completion of the process, the town will own and maintain the sculpture permanently at that site. So the goal of the discussion during this joint meeting is to talk about the terms that we want to put out in the call for artists, which we'll place on callforentry.org, as well as pretty much anywhere else that we're able to solicit that out. I did include a draft call for artists that the Yountville Arts Commission reviewed at their August 1st meeting. It's a format design that we've been successful using for general call for artists. The difference with this call is that we are looking for a specific theme in the sculpture. I did outline quite a few questions, talking points if you see fit to walk through. One of them is discussing the medium of the project. when the Yountville Arts Commission discussed this, they asked to add language to the call that would stipulate it be made to withstand outdoor elements in a satisfactory manner, but to not limit the medium. So that's something to discuss. The size. Artists, so do the council and commission wish to stipulate that the artist be a veteran, or maybe they even give preference to a veteran artist? Do the council and commission want to limit the artist be from a certain geographical area? We can tend to get, we've gotten entries from all over the world for our typical call for artists, but in the system we're able to pare that down to, even just within California or the Western United States or United States. The timeline is something we can discuss. As far as, do we want to stipulate that this be that sculpture be completed in a certain amount of time? The reason for that is that a lot of what I anticipate us getting are designs, and so artists will create a design of a sculpture, because obviously creating the actual sculpture is quite costly. So they'll submit a design for us to review and approve, and then setting some sort of timeline for when we expect that to be completed is something that we can discuss. We have gone through quite a few processes with, not quite a few, where it's been a design that has been submitted, and sometimes it can take 2 to 3 years for the sculpture to come to fruition. So that's why I posed that question. And then also completed or concept sculptures. So do you want to receive proposals of sculptures that are already complete, or do you want it to just be designs? And that's just a different question to pose. And then the last thing we should discuss is how to jury those entries. So staff is recommending that we assemble a jury to review the entries, be made up of 2 council members and an ad hoc, 2 arts commissioners, 2 parks and recreation advisory commissioners, members of the Veterans Home, and also just Yountville residents not living at the Veterans Home. And that's just a recommendation. And we would continue throughout this process. We've made great connections with Jack Strigel, the senior architect for the California Department of Veterans Affairs, who was great in weighing in on our Veterans Park project to assist us in reviewing designs for protocols and different things, depending on the representation of the veterans or any type of military reference in the sculptures that we may receive. So once you agree on those call for artist terms, staff will create the timeline and distribute the call and move forward with assembling the jury. So the part of the park renovation project, this may be able to be included in the budget, but that's yet to be determined as we are waiting for those bids to come in. If it is not able to be included, we will obviously come back to the council to request a budget adjustment, but this project will come back to the full council regardless, because you will have to approve any permanent piece of art before we accept it from the artist. So that's something the council will have to approve. So I am happy to answer questions or be here to facilitate any discussion.
Any questions from commissioners? Yeah, Chair Cook?
How is it possible to change the plans at all? I appreciate all the work that's gone into it, and I think it's going to be a beautiful improvement to the park, and I like the focus on the veterans, all the features and the usability of the park. But to me, the location that's been designated for the sculpture for veterans is just way too secondary to everything else. It's all the way through the plaza and around the corner towards the bathrooms where people don't see it. The pad right now that has the oranges will be so much more visible. Is it?
We can absolutely swap them out. I don't have any issue.
Yeah, that
with
doesn't really change that doesn't change the composition of the renovation unless we start moving pads. But I think to Samantha's point,
Could we put a pad, on the other side of the plaza or something instead of around the corner?
well, I think we could certainly relocate existing sculptures without much trouble.
I think that the issue with putting a new pad across is there's a wall there, and new planting will go in, and so I think it would.
Or more towards the front where we have 2 pads now?
If I could, yeah, we reviewed, the design element moves the flags as a feature entry point in structure. So in consultation with the expert, it threw off the balance and the solemnity that was achieved by the way the entry landscape. But I certainly think the comment about changing and making where Orange Slices or Slice of Heaven is now the preeminent veterans pad. What I would say, we have some latitude, and I think we could certainly work. The plans and specs are out, but the initial project includes a 6x6 space, so I'm fairly confident that we can work a little bit on placement within some latitude. But also, I don't see a problem with us saying we want the other location to be the Veterans one and the other one. And since we own the property and we have the agreements with the artists, we can make that happen.
I think it makes placing a piece for the art walk on the other pad around the corner a little more difficult because it's not as visible.
Well, I think.
But I think it's necessary for Veterans Park to make the Veterans one.
And two thoughts we also may want to look at is as we continue to improve, we may want to add some additional pieces going down to fill in and create more of a path of journey that excites you and brings you down to the southern end. Because one, the park has some open space areas that I think are appropriate, and as we keep linkage, you know, it's important to encourage people, provide that connection, and certainly right now we sort of bring them there to the plaza, and I think this would give us an opportunity to potentially add one or two more beyond that and really bring it further south. So sounds like the Arts Commission is creating more work for themselves by we'll work on finding a few more pad locations.
Well, you've already touched on something I was going to comment on. But we've also talked, I mean, Mario Chodo came up with a concept months ago when he and I were talking. He wouldn't necessarily be looking to stay on a single pad. Might be doing elements throughout the park. So, that's to part of our conversation about, do we say there is a specific size we want, or do we leave the creativity up to the artist that may be able to create a more complete story that represents the memorial, and it uses more than just a single concrete pad. So that's something for consideration.
We're always open to all different options.
But I think it's important to note that right now the most prominent pad is bright orange, slices.
Yeah, it gets rid of those.
And it doesn't change the bid documents unless we add more concrete. And so if we're just swapping things around, it doesn't change any of that. And that's something that we can decide on as the project moves forward.
Commissioners,
Yeah, I have a question. Does it still make sense, though, that there should be a minimum size? I mean, a 4-foot sculpture is not going to work. So I don't know what, most of our sculptures are 6 to at least 8 feet?
if you include bases. Some of them are on bases that aren't technically part of the pieces. I mean, the fish are small, but they're on a base. Some other elements.
The tomatoes.
Tomatoes, well, yeah, the basket.
Well, we can get in, I mean, when we get to the items to discuss this evening, I mean, do you want to start through that list now? It's all part of that list.
Yeah, we're originally talking about questions of the report, and so let's try to finish any specific questions we have for Samantha in the report, and then we can get into a little bit more of these specifics. So any other questions from the commissioners at this point? We'll have more discussion. We'll have some public discussion if they want. Any questions from council?
No, I think I'll wait until we're having the discussion.
Okay. Any questions from the public about this before we get into it all? Okay. So now we can get into it all. So to Jim's question, again, there's some reliance on the artist to understand proportion in an appropriate context, but if there is a minimum, again, I hesitate to put any parameters and let the creativity of the artist tell us, because if we said it has to be at least X feet in size, what if they have a different idea of creating multiple small pieces that turn into something more substantial type thing?
I agree. I would think leaving as much open as possible to the artists and their interpretation. We get some amazing sculptures offered to us through call for entry by just saying suitable for public display. sometimes it works out, sometimes they don't. But the only concern about the medium, I would not,
Yep.
Call out any specific medium, but maybe not bronze.
That's what we talked about at our meeting too on August 1st, was to specifically not ask for bronze.
The town manager would concur from a risk management perspective.
So you're just talking about the maintenance and the durability of,
Theft.
It's the theft.
oh, the theft.
We've had one stolen and one intent to steal until they found out it wasn't bronze.
Right.
And then they left it. So I don't think it's even worth opening that door.
You're also
Okay.
going to get less. Bronze is expensive, and if we're only offering, $20,000, the piece you're going to get made out of bronze is probably not going to be of the same caliber or level of something made out of a different material.
And so it sounds like the commission's kind of vetted that and feels you're in agreement that that would be something we want to exclude.
I wasn't even at that meeting.
Yeah,
We're in agreement.
yeah, but I think we are.
Okay. Does the council agree that that should be
Yeah, no,
removed?
I definitely agree.
So, there we go. No bronze.
Bronze. Okay.
But otherwise, I do like what you say instead, that it should be made to withstand the outdoor elements in a satisfactory manner, because it will be a permanent sculpture.
We write it with, safety requirements and.
Yeah, our normal.
Over the pad, and
Right.
it's gonna be 7 feet tall.
Sharp edges.
Yeah.
What about, and I'll pose this to the commission first, lighting versus non-lighting? And I don't know if, that's one of the parks where we could potentially have some lighting and it not be impactful to neighborhoods. But is it something that you want to say it needs to be a natural light,
And usually the lighting is provided by the property owner, the artist isn't involved in the lighting of the piece.
but do you want it to require lighting at night to be even visible, or?
So that would be something we would have to look at as in addition on the project. We are fully outfitting this area with electricity, so but that would be something we would have to add on. But I don't see it as insurmountable. It's not a huge issue.
So to Steve or Joe, is there any reason, that, should we even call it out, or should we just deal with it as we see submissions?
I think you may want to put the comment in that the artist needs to be aware that the sculpture could be lit at night, because there may be nuances of how a piece is prepared that may play differently. So I think it's something we should definitely let them know. We may need to make a small change order to put floodlights in, but I do think in this particular location, we're within proximity to where we're putting electrical, so it's a relatively minor thing if we want to go ahead and do that.
And this is a principal, foundational element to
Then we will do that.
we're
But I'm
talking
just
about.
saying,
So I
we
think
have
it
the
would-
consensus and the
it would
first
make
change
sense.
order.
And I just don't know if that's something that needs to be called out in the call
Yeah,
for
we
artists, that it could be
We'll note that.
illuminated. Okay. Any other thoughts from the commissioners?
So we currently, sorry,
That's
not
all right.
Commissioner. I had a question when you're done.
While they're reviewing their notes.
Just a
Samantha-
question based on the feedback you've given so far. So we do currently say that the sculpture must be smaller than the 6x6 pad, but what you've discussed is to not set that limitations in the event that it's something that hops along, or I think when my recommendation would be when we get to the point of choosing a design, there may be other budget ramifications to that. So if instead of, we do know we have a 6x6 pad that's going into the park project. In the event that it's something that comes in that's, multi-part, then we would have to look at what the installation for those look like. And I'm not saying that to not do that, because opening those doors can be amazing, but just that there could be additional budget impacts to that.
Could I suggest wording something like the current, and you could wordsmith it as you need to, the current proposal is to populate a 6x6 pad, but we are open to creative concepts,
Absolutely.
something to that effect.
And in support of that, Mayor, there are some occasional installations that may have a different format for installation than a pad, and, so I think that footnote allowing them, but what we want to do is that they have alternatives installation, we really need to understand the installation, because one of the roles I wear in all of our review of our sculptures is the risk management. So I'm looking at, do people climb on them? Do they have pointy things and all that? So, we need to know that. But I think that's certainly a good footnote, that while we have anticipated a 6x6 layout for the installation, we're open to alternative installation methods, means, and mechanisms, but we need the re-artist to provide the detail.
Okay.
And they do in the application, they're asked to. We also say artwork must weigh no more than 2,000 pounds. That's based on the ability of a crane to lift an individual sculpture. So I would say 2,000 pounds, like per individual sculpture or something like that. So
Individual piece.
Do you need to call out the weight, or say needs to be, have the ability to be installed by crane? Or does that not?
I can add that.
That's what I'm getting. Like, if we said 2,000 and somebody has a 2,500 pound thing, do we want it to be eliminated automatically? Or if they have a way they would have to have a way to install it. Yeah.
I will change that slightly. And then we decided that we don't want to stipulate size. Is that correct? Minimum or maximum?
Do we want to restrict the material other than bronze, or leave it any medium other than bronze?
I think that's okay.
Council, any thoughts on that?
We did talk about wood also being maybe one we didn't want to do just because it doesn't hold up as well, but I think if you do that, you could restrict a piece that has wood elements to it, which might not necessarily be a bad thing. And I mean, I guess as long as they're treated, it should be okay.
Yeah. Vice Mayor?
Well, the one thing I'd like to discuss that I didn't really see in here, I like to stipulate that it be original art.
Yes.
And a unique piece. Do we have that in there?
It is in there.
Yes, so we do stipulate that it has to be an original work of art. So it's not, I was in Napa.
So it can't be a
when they went
numbered
through that
1 out of
process.
300?
Exactly. It can't be a series, and it can't be a reproduction of something that's already existing. But it says original, but I could definitely put more emphasis in language to that
One
effect.
of a kind?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I'd definitely like to see that in there. I just kind of harken back to the the brouhaha that they had down in the city of Napa with their veterans piece, and so if we can avoid that at all. And then I had another question. When you do some of the art walk now, or even the call for artists for the mural, how many people actually that submit art or applied for the mural actually have ever been here? I mean, is that something that we want to at least say we'd like to encourage that they visit the site? I know we just had a little bit of discussion about maybe it's going to go here on this pad or that pad, but have you ever done that, or is there any value to that?
Well, we wouldn't have Chaos Pamplona if we required Judd Novat to be here first, for example.
I'm not going to require it. I'm just saying it could be.
I think if we got, generally, I think we will get proposed sculptures, not things already completed. And so we will get drawings or pictures of something that they want to do similar but different this way. And so either we send them pictures of the site, or if they're local enough, they would probably want to come see it. I would assume, since it is a commission piece, not just for the art walk, it's only here for 2 years. So I generally.
And you kind of move it wherever you want it to go, but for this, it's kind of.
Let them know where it's going.
Something that I was thinking about and talking a little with Priya is to take it kind of a step further than what we've done in the past, and actually do a video tour of the park and a little bit of talking points about the relationship to the veterans home, and a little more emphasis on our history, so that and not just give them a photo. We will give photos, but also maybe the redesigned map of the park, since that won't be completed yet, but trying to engage that. Some of our projects that are more construction in nature, we do like a mandatory pre-bid.
Right.
Unfortunately, because we get so many artists from all over, not just the United States, but the world, that I think it would really limit our impact in the amount of quality art that we're going to get proposed back if we made it mandatory.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't, I'm not saying mandatory, just like, encourage them to visit the site or read, see the tutorial you're going to put together. I think that's a great idea, just so they have a little, and I think I like the idea of the history, so they have some context of what we're trying to achieve. I mean, we have very broad ideas, but if we could...
We have had good success. I would say the vast majority of the artists have come because we require them to provide and take ownership of the installation method. And one of the reasons I say that is, one, they need to ensure that it's installed correctly to their standards to meet the requirements that we have. But secondly, what we've really found, most of the artists come, they spend some time, attention, and they focus on placement. Whether it's this 6 inches shift or this and that and the right profile. So the vast majority of the artists are certainly here for the installation. And in today's environment with Google and the pictorial, we've been finding, at least in the conversations with some of the more recent selected artists, many of them are very well aware of the space, especially when we can identify it. So I think putting all of that together will be helpful, and we can put a whole package and then go from there.
If we could, I think the video is a great idea, but if we could also represent the different lighting conditions, morning, midday, evening, I think that would be important.
I have one more thing.
Yes.
I'd like some information on, you've kind of outlined what the jury committee would look like here. Did you give any consideration or discussion to having the same kind of, having maybe a jury or committee pick 3 finalists and then let everybody vote again? Is that like too many votes? It really was such a great community process, and is that something that you talked about, or?
We didn't talk about it, but I definitely am open to it. I think.
I don't think that's part of this call for artists. I think that's our own process.
No, I'm just saying
it's good to get that feedback from you, though, how you would like to see the process move forward. I think it's important to have a smaller group approach what could be a very large response, and then, I mean, if you are favorable to the way that we handled the mural project, I think it's definitely feasible.
It is a different committee that we're putting together. Where
yes.
This was just the arts committee building the mural project, and this is a committee with town council members, arts, veterans, residents. It's already encompassing.
And we could approach it the same way in that group, if that's the council's direction, is that's a suitable group of people. If, in approaching it similarly, that group would decide, okay, I could live with all 3 of these designs, and then letting the public choose, with obviously the council having that final decision. That's, it's a very, we know how to do it.
Yeah, it was very successful. I mean, I just don't really, just kind of throwing it out there see what everybody thought.
Does that then bring up the question of timeline then? Because that's a longer process, right? If we're involving the public, because that was one of the things we had to decide on, if we were going to have a timeline.
It is, but I think my recommendation is to not rush through because you want to do it right. And I think it also leads back to the mural taking, 18 months to get to this point, is that it's permanent. And so if we want to take a little longer, then I think that's totally fine. Obviously, the art wouldn't be able to go in until the project's over, but there is really no timeline set to have a sculpture, and it can take as long as we want the process to take.
And before I call on Councilmember Durham, I want to ask Joe or Steve, what is the completion window right now for the renovation?
Well, first of all, what I would say is amplifying on that, the current plans for the project just include the initial 6x6 additional pad as part of the project. So that has no impact on the timing. We are currently looking at, and I'm going to say this, part of us have toyed with the idea that it would really be great if we could reopen Veterans Memorial Park around Veterans Day. I think we're just going to be about 30 days
past that
optimistic, but I would say end of the year, first part of January, I would anticipate the park renovation being completely done. So again, that will include the pad. If we choose to go do something different, I would agree with Parks and Rec Director Holland, getting it right, however the council determines the process you want to be, is more appropriate. Because the community as a whole and the Veterans Home community knows that the goal and the objective is, and we will have started the process before the project is complete, so they will then know what is coming once we determine the process that you want to go about for selecting whatever that is.
Well, to that point, and then I'll call on Councilmember Durham, maybe we're being premature about this and putting the pressure on an artist to look at a rendering to see what it's going to look like, as opposed to waiting a few months till it's actually complete and have a real canvas to look at. That might be a smarter way to go about
well,
this.
I think, that's certainly something, again, I think the emphasis for this discussion came out of the earlier council feedback about wanting to do this. So I'm certainly, from a staff perspective, in some ways, this is a parallel process. So if the decision was made to do that, we can certainly do that. I mean, the reason we're incorporating it at this point was based on prior council feedback from a timing standpoint.
Right.
But I can't disagree that if you want them to fully understand the context, we've learned some people understand and read site plans and elevations really well. I'm going to go on the deep end here and suggest that not all artists probably do that. Some will have a better understanding of them than others. But I think what the commitment is that whatever we're doing everybody needs to know we're moving forward and that commitment's made. So we can certainly at our level, taking another couple months before doing the call or getting an understanding of the site, certainly doable. It's really, we'll go either direction at your council request.
Right. Councilmember Durham.
Well, and to go back to what you said about the park not being done, my initial thought when you suggested that the piece should be moved to where Slice of Life is that according to this rendering, it's going to be covered by trees. So will it still be visibly accessible from all angles as Slice of Life is now? So I think that speaks volumes to what you just said. And then also, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I don't think the public should be involved like it was with the mural project. This isn't a mural. This isn't an interpretation of what we think Yountville is to us. You've made it very clear during this whole process with the redesign of the park of how important it is that the veterans be represented here appropriately, and we've had to go back and forth a long time. I think that a lot of the commissioners and the people that are involved are the right ones to make this choice. I think it's great to have the public tell us if they like it or not, but I don't necessarily know if we need to create a lengthy timeline, especially like we did with the mural, which ended up great. But we have professionals for this, especially Jack from the Veterans Affairs that everybody has spoken so highly of as well. Those are the people that have the most important input, So, and once again, it is art. Not everybody's going to like it. We're all going to have our opinions on it as well. So, in terms of the public and the timeline, I wanted to make that known.
Thanks. Councilmember Dornbecker?
Well, based on that feedback, I'd like to make a suggestion because I know that up at the Veterans home, there is a vibrant arts community, and rather than limiting their participation on the ad hoc committee to just 2 veterans, perhaps we could add, have 2 veterans who are involved in the arts committees up at the Veterans home, in addition to 2 regular veterans, perhaps, and maybe that would, work so that the artists up there would feel like they were included as well as the veterans. But that's...
And I agree 100%. That's exactly who should be having the big say on this as well. So, exactly.
Vice Mayor, any thoughts on, I think we're talking the potential jury at this point, ad hoc committee, whatever you'd like to call it.
I think that, actually, maybe after we have some discussion, we haven't had public comment yet. We have somebody from...
We're not finished.
The Veterans Home. I'd love to hear what they have to say, so any comment I make, I'm very open to, how we go about this, but And I just think that we really need an emphasis on information from the veterans. I mean, if we don't vote on it, we have to make it very clear that they, should go to the representatives and see what's going on and express their opinions, or make these meetings, get as much information out so they can come and at least have their say. So it just isn't going to be to anybody's advantage after the fact. Well, how come you let us, do the mural? Why didn't you let us do that? So we just, however we go about it, I think we just be very sensitive to, this is Veterans Park, and they know that a statue is going to go in there, and be very clear about how that was chosen, and how they can direct their comments too.
I think the point you made earlier about the City of Napa's Memorial Park, I think one of the problems that was created was because it became, unfortunately, the way I'll put it, is too public. It became too public a process, and it became a very politically sensitive process because of that. And it makes it very difficult to put something in a location that's very sensitive and appropriate. So I think it's important that we, I feel differently about the mural. I still think that there are, as Councilmember Durham said, there are either professional or highly educated people that know the context we're talking about. And the context about this particular project is I think, very critical. While there absolutely should be a public process involved, and again, in an advisory capacity, I think it makes total sense to get some of the artists that are at the home involved, because we are going to, the danger is you have 30 people on a jury and you have 30 opinions, and then where are we? Or if you get 400 people and some understand the context and some don't, and then it almost is more harmful than helpful. So I caution what direction we go in terms of making those final decisions. I think the early stages maybe is more appropriate for a larger public involvement in, like you talked about earlier, Chair Cook, about interpretive, abstract, historical, not specific to a piece, but in a general philosophy, and then you start to get the more, experienced folks that drill down on the specific artists, the specific pieces, and help guide that in a proper direction. So that might be a similar process that we follow. Not as, I would be a little uncomfortable with leaving it up to a general call to all to say, what are we going to do? I just don't think that, it's already challenging to get, a solution on the mural, but Councilmember Dornbecker?
Well, I think that that's an excellent segue, speaking about the veterans, to whether or not we want to talk about the artist being a veteran or giving preference to a veteran artist, or an artist who is a veteran. And I think if we could find, a great piece of art from a veteran, that would be fabulous. And that all the veterans would really get behind it. But I don't know, but, it sort of flows into that, how much, input does that have on what we're going to do, so.
I think it would be great if we could find that, but I certainly wouldn't limit our search to that.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think it might limit.
Because we've tried, not through call for entry, but we did put out a public, press release a couple of years ago looking for a piece for that park.
From a veteran artist.
From a veteran artist or, by a veteran?
It was
Or about.
by a veteran or a patriotic in nature. And we did I did spend quite a bit of time putting together a mailing list on how to reach veterans, and we got one response. And it was not something that we would consider. So.
But there wasn't a budget on that.
There was not a budget.
For the art walk.
Yeah.
So it would have been the normal, I think we were $1,000 stipend at the time. I think that might be the difference as well.
It would be a nice feature. I wouldn't limit
And it also goes to a point that I wanted to discuss about, this is Veterans Memorial Park. It is not necessarily the same thing as Veterans Park. The names are different. The connotations are different. Some people might think Veterans Park should be about combat veterans, the military, and others will say it should be about the people that have served our country as veterans in the military. There's a difference there, I think. I think that was the challenge that happened in Napa. Some people felt that the sculpture that was ultimately placed in Veterans Memorial Park represented war, because it was the traditional representation of a fallen soldier, and that really didn't sit well with people who don't think that represents the memorial component of the park. So I think that's, again, what I continue to hear is that we want to be as open-minded and avoid restriction almost everywhere in this process. And if we have to adjust a pad or we have to add some financing, then we deal with that if we find something that speaks to us as that's exactly what we're looking for. But again, that's another area of sensitivity. What is it we're representing? And is it the memorial nature of the park, not just military participation, combat?
That might come more in the discussion by the jury over whether pieces are appropriate, more so than putting it in the call.
Yeah.
That's fine. Councilor Durham?
Oh,
Sorry.
it's okay.
No?
No.
Okay. Samantha.
Just as a kind of a clear, because as you're talking, my mind gets going in that. Sometimes, though, if you can put some of that information in the call, it really assists in weeding through what you are going to get. And so if there is any type of consensus amongst the group as far as the focus of this, and maybe the focus is to do some sort of community survey like we did with the mural, because it's a good point. There's a lot of difference between something that's patriotic versus something that is, veterans of combat wars versus veterans who've served, and there's just a lot. It's fairly broad. And so when I start to think about it, I think, okay, so we get 65 entries and we have to create a scoring matrix. If they're vastly different in nature, how difficult is that going to be for your jury? If they have very different themes and points of view. So that's something we may want to spend some more time thinking about.
Maybe to the point that you were just making, if we just in a general summary emphasize this is Veterans Memorial Park and kind of leave it at that, to say this is an important understanding and distinction for the artist to recognize, and then let them do what they do creatively, and then the jury says you're in line with our vision or you're not.
Samantha was very good at building matrix for us as judges to look at either artists or pieces. And even though it was sometimes difficult to find the answer to the questions, but it made you think about each piece in the same way. And even if you liked it, did it meet this? And so having a well-built matrix of what the town is sort of looking for, not in an exact standard of height and size, but in the thought process and to represent Veterans Memorial Park.
Because we were able with the mural to give artists just a little bit of direction, in that we had that survey data that said we're not looking for faces and places of historic nature. So it did lead us in a little bit of a direction as far as the artists were concerned. But we can play around with the wording a little bit to see if we can get to that before we release anything.
The other thing, if we're going to take a few moments to perhaps reevaluate, it might not be bad to assemble the jury, have them be involved in the final call for artists, so that I'm just thinking this one through as we're going, and maybe get them a little bit more involved, bring that back, because that way we have a much broader understanding, and those those folks that you ultimately determine should be on your advisory jury need to know what they're signing up for, and that will give us some opportunity. I mean, it may be the right thing to do is to sit down, have a working meeting, kind of discuss that, and bring them all together.
Any other comments from the council before I invite the public? Councilmember Durham?
About geography, because I think we keep touching upon it, but I don't know how important that is when it comes to a Veterans Memorial Park. And you've discussed entries from all over the world. I don't know if it's important that we need just a U.S. artist. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick to find out what the consensus was.
I was thinking about that as we were having this whole conversation. I think in normal circumstances it doesn't matter, but maybe because of the nature of this project, it does need to be a U.S.-based artist.
Okay.
I don't think it needs to be a veteran artist. I think that limits us too much. But being someone from the U.S. might be an important thing, and I feel like it would be an important thing to the members of the Veterans Home also.
Can I just comment?
Yeah, any other thoughts on that particular point?
I agree.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. You don't have to be sure.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, there are veterans from all over the world, of course. I would like to add, as we're talking about it, that I think it's really important to have a call out to the community, at least initially for their input. I think that we all remember the very active conversations there were when all the trees were taken out, and I know a lot of people still have feelings about that they didn't know about it. And then it was a good idea and an opportunity for them to jump in and get involved. And that park is really active. And there are a lot of veterans that are there all day long. And it is an initial point when visitors come to our town, that the look and feel of that park is important to everybody. So
Absolutely.
it'd be nice to have everybody's input, at least initially, not to make the committee 30, 40 people, I understand that, but.
And the nice thing is that this will be discussed at length, I'm sure, at many public meetings. And so we've come a long way since Treegate 2015 in the way that we respond to our community and let them know that stuff's going on in the public parks. And I've also made this amazing connection with Sharon to continue to help us discuss things and get the word out to the Veterans Home as well. So we're
Councilmember
working.
Dornbecker?
Well, I realize that the geographic considerations, because certainly we learned with Chaos Pamplona that it's very expensive to get something brought over from another country. But when I was in Normandy in France, the French memorial to the U.S. soldiers was absolutely breathtaking and stunning and wonderful. I don't know. I guess I could live with it either way, but I'm just recalling how impressed I was with and I don't really know who the artist was who did the sculptures there, but it was a spectacular, uplifting, young, soldier, I guess. He looked more like a god. But anyway, that's just an aside. I think that in a way it would be, because it is the United States, I guess, that limiting it to United States artists would be okay, but something to think about.
I'm going to use Samantha's mention of Sharon as a segue to invite our audience to come comment if you would like to. And don't wait until I say last chance. Okay, last chance. Okay, then we'll just continue to have any further discussion. There are two things that I want to get clear. One is I personally feel like we should put this off until the renovation is complete, and so I want to talk about that further. And the other thing is, to town manager's point, related to a jury, assuming we want to compose a jury, do we want to do it right away and get them involved and help them, have them help craft a public outreach initially and then be a part of the whole process? And if so, then we need to really drill down on how to constitute that group. So let's maybe talk first about, do we feel like we should move forward right away and incorporate it into the renovation, or do we wait if we were talking about waiting a year, I'd feel differently than talking about waiting for 3 or 4 months. But that's me. So, any other thoughts on, do we maybe table this till the renovation is finished, or keep moving forward?
I'm fine with waiting until the renovation is finished. I like that idea. I think it's hard to create a piece of artwork if you don't know what the space is actually going to look like at the end. You can only learn so much from a rendering. Right?
Yeah. Yes, Jim.
I think that the process could begin now, 3 or 4 months ahead, at least slowly getting people together to start talking about it.
Dee, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Just get the word of mouth, if anything else, just going and get the artists underground and involved.
Council, on that particular point, Councilmember Durham?
Is it possible to put the jury together and then have them put together all these different elements that we've spoke about?
I think that's what Samantha was just...
And then by the time that you've... then once you have it all together and you're ready to send it out, it's going to sound like it's going to coincide very closely to at least the park being...
Yes.
Starting that renovation. So let's start it that way then.
Yeah, based on your discussion, I think we're going to need a couple months to put together the jury based on the outcome of how you want to go about that. And I think timing-wise, we get into the holidays, it's not really a good time. And so we're also going to be managing a mural installation during that time and a park project. So I think, giving us a timeline of January or February to actually start putting the call for artists out there would be good timing.
Right. I do echo, we would like to use that time period to get the jury selected, have the final input so that the call for artists can go out end of November, beginning of January on that timeline.
Councilor Dornbecker?
I think that's the way we should go to.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, because I'm, at least this is my own personal vision. I think that it is Yountville Memorials Park. The Veterans Memorial Park. It's not Veterans Park. And to me, a very key piece of that park is that is part of that park is the original land that was the veterans' home way before Yountville even existed. So calling that, into some kind of parameters so that we get that flavor both of Yountville and, back to 1882 when they purchased the land versus, Veterans Memorial. That's what I would like to see some of these early discussions with the committee that you put together, like how do you frame that to then give Sam something to, I don't want to use the word narrow the focus, but, better define the focus of what we'd like to get. So I think starting those discussions.
Well, I think to that point, though, and I think that's if we have those discussions, that helps write the narrative that goes into the call for artists so that we have a better description about what we're looking for. And I think that's why I'm saying if we get them started, they have work to do. And
Well, I think we need to land on the interpretive panels that are representing the history of the home already in the project.
Yeah.
So that's another reason, I think, to wait and see, where are those panels going to be, and what are they representing, and how could this fit in the context of that? So,
absolutely. And
so I think we've settled on, we don't need to take any action to say we're not taking action on moving forward with the call for artists, but what we do need to still drill down on, it sounds like there's a majority of the council and certainly the commission that says we should move forward constituting a jury. So with that, we need to figure out whom do we want to include. Yes. So, certainly a couple council members should be involved, a couple arts commissioners should be involved. I think those listed here, 2 Park and Rec Advisory Commissioners should be involved. Again, this is one of our most significant parks. I think it makes sense to have 2 Yountville residents that are not members of the Veterans Home. And then we've had a couple different ideas about 2 Veterans Home members. Councilmember Dornbecker mentioned specifically artists that live at the Veterans Home, whether that's those same 2 people or in addition to that.
I thought
then, I mean, that's what we have to talk about. I also think that we should have a sculpture artist on this, if it's at all possible. I know that I've learned from conversations like with Lorenzo Mills, who in conversations with the Arts Commission in the past brings up things because he's a sculpture artist, things you may not know. Now, maybe the commissioners feel confident enough that you know what the materials are best to use or the locations or whatever it might be, but there may be a need to have somebody who really is a professional in outdoor sculpture, something to consider.
Well, for what you just said, I mean, we didn't have that for the mural project. None of us were actual muralists, but we knew what we were looking for. I don't necessarily know if it's necessary for us to have a sculpture artist on the jury. Maybe if someone who also is already on it happens to be, that's a nice kind of added bonus. You also have to make sure they're willing to not submit to the project, because that creates a conflict of interest. The other thing I'm nervous about as we're talking about this is the jury's getting really large as we're sitting here, and not so much for jurying, but for creating that call for artists. To get 10 to 12 people to agree is going to not be an easy process. So I don't know if there's something else that we could do, like we talked about, maybe some kind of survey that's very basic that goes out first to kind of eliminate the need for everybody to get so involved in the beginning. It's making me feel like it's gonna be at a standstill for a long time, personally. I know that's not the opinion of everybody else, but.
Councilmember Durham?
Maybe to that point then, given how successful the surveys were for the murals up at the Veterans Home, we can at least tailor something to that to get their feedback to start.
Well, I think that I would be comfortable with having two veterans that are artists at the Veterans Home, and they be the representatives for the membership of the home. And it's their responsibility, not alone, but principally, to get the feedback from all of the residents.
I like that.
I don't know that we need 800 800 forms turned in with 800 ideas, so they can be at the Allied Council meetings and make a presentation and hear feedback and be the point people before it comes to the commission and the jury, and they're part of the jury.
Right.
I think that's appropriate. I mean, we're going to get public comment from more than just the jury, but we do need to have a controllable, size group.
Yeah.
So
how do we choose those two?
Well, we have to decide do we want two, and then we can worry about how we choose those two. I mean, we're at 10 right now if we're going with the recommendation in the report: 2 council members, 2 arts commissioners, 2 park and rec advisory commissioners, 2 artists that live at the Veterans Home, and 2 non-bound Yountville residents.
And the only difficult part is
Even numbers.
Councils, commissions come up with 2. Council will come up with 2. Parks will come up with 2. The hard part is if you get 40 Yountville residents apply, or 40 veteran home artists apply.
Pick them out of the hat.
Who narrowed it down?
Well, that's what the Vice Mayor's question just was. We'll figure that out as soon as we decide what the Constitution should be. You could also argue we're all representing Yountville as residents, almost all of us.
I'm basically here all the time.
That's right. So might that demographic already be met?
Given my comment before about the public, I love the public. I just want that to be known. But I don't, to go back to, I'm a firm believer in death by committee, a firm believer in it. And so I will say that we do not need the 2 Yountville citizens at large on this committee. Keep it to 8.
Well, the danger of an even number is a tie vote, so I would want to.
One.
Yeah.
Or give 3 to the Veterans Home would be
1 or 3.
my thing, so that you have 9.
Or 3
So let me ask this question, Steve. What involvement can we have with Jack Striegel in terms of, could he be maybe a a member of the jury?
I think
Would
we
that
have
be
to be really
inappropriate?
careful. He's comfortable being a consultative. I don't know that
Okay.
he would be comfortable. Now, here's
That's
one
fine.
thought that you could do, though, is you could ask your third veterans home spot could be somebody from the home administration.
And what would that be bringing?
I'm just, we could
Specifically.
bring something,
They don't want
hopefully that would bring some
Do so much stuff.
oversight, management, the relationship between veterans home, CalVets. I'm just offering it as a solution, or you could simply go with 3 residents. I'm just saying there's,
Well, I think what we've also done with previous groups, we've said if we were to merge the 2 veteran home members and the 2 Yountville residents, to say 3 Yountville residents, at least 2 of which should be veterans home members.
Shall be.
Well, you if there are none that apply, then you don't get anyone.
That's true.
So, but you can put a priority. Yeah, you have you add a priority to 2 of those 3 resident positions that they be members of the veterans home, and then you also get to an odd number instead of an even number. So I'll throw that out
Oh,
there as
9, I
a
think.
consideration.
that's still back at
9.
9. You're
2
still at
council, 2 arts commission, 2 park and rec, 3 residents, of whom 2 should be
From the
veterans home members.
That's 9.
So
Sounds like consensus.
consensus on that being the constitution of the jury. Now, how we go about selecting those. I mean, the council at any meeting can pick the 2. The Arts Commission can do the same. The Park and Recs can do the same at their at an
Their
upcoming. And then we put this out in all of our normal and newly added communication platforms to invite members of the Veterans Home and members of the public to participate. Samantha, what your thoughts on timing and mainly timing for that? I mean, we have like Park and Rec meeting. Our next meeting is
September.
until. Well, we have the special meeting that's on the 23rd
For the council.
for the council.
Parks and Rec Advisory will meet in September, as well as Art. And it could be fairly simple to get the resident request out. It would just be the process in which you want to select them in the event that we get more than 3 people.
Can we say, well, yeah, how are we
How
going
do
to
you
do
envision that?
Can we see what response we get and then we deal with it if we have to? If we put this on the September 20 town council agenda, the September whatever,
I'm going to need to encourage you
go
to look
farther
at the
out.
October 4th council agenda.
that's fine.
Well, wasn't there was a thought that all 3, that we put 3 members from the Veterans Home? And isn't there some organization at the Veterans Home that could be charged with selecting the 3?
Well, the Allied Council, Allied Council has mixed success on getting people involved. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But we can certainly work through their activities department to reach out to all the members. It can be brought up at the Allied Council meetings, certainly. The delegates from each of the residential units can bring it to their regularly scheduled meetings, so there's already a process that can be followed.
So do you see yourselves as interviewing them similar to what you would do for a commissioner, or reviewing applications, or no? Staff recommending?
Well, who's they?
I don't know.
Flip coins.
At the Allied Council or the Arts Commission, let the people of the Veterans Home pick their 3.
Well, what I was proposing is that we have 3, 2 of whom would be residents. The third may be a resident, they may be a non-resident of the home.
But at least 2 would be,
Well,
should be.
Marina suggested all 3.
And I'm
Well.
suggesting something different.
I agree with Marina.
Well, that's what we're trying to determine. So
I'd like to
speaking of
bring up
that,
another complication, and that is, I think that it really would be more fair if we had a full complement of council members on the dais as well.
so that won't be until January. December. We'll actually swear in the first meeting of December, but election night, we typically have very little on the agenda.
But
We can push
perhaps,
I mean, if next week the election is canceled, then we'll at least know whom is constituting the council, and we could potentially make it a little. I hesitate to make it a robust agenda on election night. Robust meaning this might take a while, like it is right now.
Well, the Ally Council meeting, the next one's not till September the 14th. So if you have it, were you suggesting September the 20th interviews?
No, October.
Oh, okay.
We have a very busy September 20th.
It would be
and we're
Okay,
coming
because
back
they
from-
meet the second Wednesday of the month, so you'd only have one opportunity to get a call out
Oh,
during that meeting.
we have two meetings in October, right?
14th.
The 4th and the
October 4th would be
18th.
at this point, the October 4th would look reasonable.
The
Again,
18th sounds good
there
to
is the
me.
caveat, I don't know if you have 3 people to interview or 23 to interview. So part of it will be, if you want to go through the interview process, that's your prerogative. If you go through a process where you delegate the selection of the veterans' home residents to the home, then you'll end up with 3 people. That's sort of what I'm hearing, a little bit of mixture from the council on how to go about that. It could be that, and I'm just going to throw out something completely odd, perhaps you have one from the Veterans Home Art Group, one representative from the Allied Council of their choice, and one representative designated by the home administrator.
Well, I kind of like the open idea. I mean, if you really say, the Veterans Home Art Group, it's a very, very diverse group. And there's some that just kind of administrate the whole thing and some that are actual artists. And so it's not a defined body. And, even the Allied Council.
It's really going to be a question for you all of,
Yeah.
you know,
I like the idea of throwing it out there with a reasonable amount of time, seeing if we get enough people. If we don't, then extending it like
well,
we
that
do
that means you have
sometimes.
no structure. At least with going to the art group, you have some people that are at least experienced at some level with art.
Well, right, but we could, I mean, there are, a lot of key people in the art group come to the Allied Council meeting every month. Sharon probably knows that, and because they get up and do their public comment. So I think it's a good way to reach them, and to maybe at their first meeting in September, and then,
Well, I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. We haven't even decided if we're talking about the 3 members being all Veterans Home residents or 2 of the 3 at a minimum, and having an additional one that's basically an at-large town resident. We have to decide on that. Let's decide on that, and then we can worry about how the members of the home are chosen.
Well, you have to remember, too, maybe a good point is we do have veterans living in the community that do not live at the veterans home. So if you limit it to veterans home residents, then you may be excluding a veteran living in Yountville.
So let's do this. Let's try 3 Yountville residents, at least 2 of whom are veterans. Period.
Are veterans.
So then it has to be an open call, right? Everybody has to send something, which we have to decide what that is, to Sam.
Oh, we have that.
Yes.
oh yeah, we
Right.
have that.
Yes, that's what we're
That's
saying.
fine.
Yeah.
And we
I think
still
that's-
go through the same process. We inform the Allied Council, we have the delegates tell the residents, we bring it up in all of our normal, nextdoor.com.
So then, well, a little bit of what I'm hearing is we'll see how many applicants we get and then decide how to move forward with that process, whether you do in-person interviews or no. Okay, so who would make
No,
that
that's-
decision?
that's-
The interview point is okay.
Okay.
I just don't see, in terms of the timeline and
Yeah.
by committee again, in terms of how we can figure something out. I don't think whether it's 4 or 25, I don't think we need to be interviewing.
Okay.
people. We
So
need
you-
to get them
Let's,
on there.
You
let's,
could
we're going to
review
decide that
applications.
when we have to decide that.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
We're going to find 9, we're going to try to find 9 people that are willing to do it. And if we find 9 exactly, we don't have to worry about interviewing. If we have 30, then we have to worry about
And what I will
selection.
indicate just to bring some closure, we will do a recruitment. This is the council advisory committee, so we'll do a recruitment for the 3 seats. The other 6 will be an assignment. They'll be, the
Yes.
council will make.
Each of the 3 bodies will
They'll
pick
make
2
their
representatives.
designees. They'll have that. So we will do our normal process for outreach and solicitation. We'll reach out, but that we'll go through, and ultimately the council will make, if there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 16, then the council
The
will
the
narrow
3
that.
bodies that currently exist, we can do this in September.
Correct. Those will be on the next appropriate meeting dates for those 3 meetings.
Okay. Councilmember Dornbecker?
Yes, I would like to suggest that after we have our meeting and decide on whether or not we will hold an election or appoint, that after that is decided, then all the council members who will be decided upon at that time will be available and eligible to be
Let me
represented.
provide a little clarification
They're not-
to that question.
We can't do that.
Right.
You're not
Please.
officially a council member until you're sworn in
I
December.
need to, I'll provide some clarification. This is not about appointing. What we are is you'll be canceling the election.
Potentially.
Potentially. And if you don't cancel, the net effect is the 3 people on the ballot, their status won't change until November when the election, and then from that standpoint, what I'm trying to say is you don't have the ability to have the seat filled, the vacancy
Until the election.
cannot be filled until the actual date of the election. And that's what I'm just trying to say. The technicality does not, even though you may make the decision to cancel the election because there's only 3 people running for 3 seats, the law does not allow you to appoint that person just because it's a unique situation that we happen to have
An ad hoc
the
committee.
vacancy in that. So I'm just saying,
Right.
everybody needs to be aware of, I'm sure that the person potentially out there will continue to stay actively involved in participating and soaking up all the information, but that person cannot take that seat until the first meeting in December.
Samantha, do you have enough guidance from all of us?
Yes.
You don't need any formal action for any of this?
No.
Not yet. Is it clear to all the commission what we're doing and
Want me to recap?
not doing yet? Okay. Any further conversation about this? I think we've thoroughly vetted it.
No interviews. No. Just kidding.
Yeah. So with that, I'm ignoring Councilmember Durham's comment. I will go ahead and invite adjournment both of the Arts Commission. I want to thank our commissioners for your participation today and like I said, throughout all of your commitment to advancing arts here in Yountville. So thank you for that. I'll invite a vote on adjournment for the Arts Commission to their next meeting of September 12, and for the Town Council adjournment to a special meeting on August 23rd at 3:30.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
You guys all in favor of that too? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, audience.